Hello and welcome to another episode of From A to Zinc, the podcast bringing clarity to the supplement industry. If you've ever stared at the back of a supplement bottle wondering what all those ingredients and numbers actually mean, or if you're creating your own supplement and want to know how to make the perfect formula, this episode is for you. My guest today, Shawn Wells, is known as the world's greatest formulator. He's a nutritional biochemistry expert with over 2 decades of experience, more than 1,200 product formulations, and over 40 unique patents. He's worked as chief clinical dietitian, played a key role in major acquisitions in the supplement and biohacking space, is the author of the international bestseller The Energy Formula, and speaks all around the world, sharing his expertise in health, performance, and longevity. In this conversation, he's going to help us decode supplements, how to read an ingredient list, how to spot the red and the green flags, and what it really takes to create the perfect formula. Hello, Shawn. Great to have you here. Thank you for joining me today. I'm super excited to have one of the most trusted voices in supplements to help me tackle today's topics.
Let's go. I'm excited to be here as well.
Perfect. So let's get started with topic number 1, which is basically helping people decode supplements. I've learned you can basically not just trust what a supplement says on the label or what maybe the marketing claim is. How do you go about in judging a supplement?
That's a great question. And what frustrates me so much as someone who's been in this industry for about 25 years, and people say all the time that this industry isn't regulated, that supplements don't work, supplements are a waste of money, you can get everything you need from food. I have heard all the things, just take your medications and all this kind of stuff. Here's some of the problems. One, supplements, there is often cost cutting, just like in any business, to where if we can get away with it, we being the company, we want to get away with it and have higher profits. And this is where proprietary blends come in. This is where sourcing from very poor companies that have low quality, and proprietary blends means that it is a blend of ingredients and they just list the total dose of all of the ingredients. So it could be the muscle and strength blend with 17 ingredients. The first ingredient could be 99% of that total dose. So let's say it's 1,000 milligrams, 999 milligrams could be that first ingredient, creatine, great ingredient, but all the other ingredients, the other 16 ingredients could be the other 1 milligram. And so is that formula going to be effective? Is it going to work? Is it worth its money? No. They're listing all of these ingredients that you heard of that you think are worthwhile, but you're not getting them. 1 milligram of 16 ingredients. So this is the scam, and this is what frustrates me. And what I'm looking for is a brand that has established quality across 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Brands like Now Foods, Thorne, Designs for Health, Pure Encapsulations, Nordic Naturals, Life Extension Foundation, Jarrow. These are brands that have been around for many years. You can believe in, have big quality control departments. Their quality control departments are bigger than these entire companies are on Amazon. They spend more in quality control, in testing the raw materials, the finished goods, like lot to lot, doing stability testing, all of this work than these entire companies have of people. There are companies on Amazon that are making 50 million, 100 million a year that just have one person, and they don't care about testing. They're not doing any testing. They don't care about whether it's effective. They're just using algorithms and trying to come in at the lowest cost, having ingredients that don't test out because Amazon doesn't hold them to that. And that's what they're putting up there. So this is what's frustrating about the supplement industry is, yes, there is regulation by the FDA and FTC in the US. But at the same time, they're overworked and there's very few people that can actually do the oversight needed across tens of thousands of companies. There are probably 20 supplement companies coming online every day and hundreds of products being added, if not thousands of products every day. So there's no way to have enough oversight right now with the growth of this industry. So that means that we have to do the work. So look for products that have the trusted names, that have the quality control, that have been around. Look for products that don't have the proprietary blends, that are full disclosure, that are listing the ingredient, the plant part, like root, flower, stem, whole plant, that lists the genus and species if it's an herb, that lists the standardization of what the active component of that herb it's standardized to, and then the dose. And you want every ingredient listed like that. And you want every ingredient to work on a different pathway. I see sometimes products for blood sugar that have 5 ingredients that are all the same pathway, and it makes no sense because they're just formulating for name recognition instead of efficacy, meaning how effective it is. A supplement formulator, a biochemist, a dietitian, someone with training like me would be thinking of complementary mechanisms of action. And then there's actual synergy in the formulation. And then when you actually see this full disclosure, you can go to PubMed. You can go to examine.com. You can go to, I guess, ChatGPT and see it's this dose, it's this standardization. What do the studies show? Okay, it's actually in the right form, the right dose, the right standardization. I should expect that it does this because that's what we're doing. It costs a lot more per ingredient. It could be 10 to even 100 times the cost to have the right material at the right dose versus putting in 1 milligram of nothing like these other guys are doing. So this is what's frustrating to me about the supplement industry. These products can work very well and quite frankly can outdo many medications on the market. These ingredients can be highly effective, and the studies show this. And people that have used quality formulas, like from a Thorne or Pure Encapsulations, know this. Products that I've formulated as well. I've formulated about 1,200 products. But the important part is that you want to see that full disclosure. You want to see that it doesn't have ridiculous claims. You want to see the quality company.
That's absolutely fantastic. And I think that takes a lot of your experience to be able to judge a product like that. But I think there's a lot of takeaways for people listening. But if I were to then break it down, maybe for listeners to like, let's say the top 3 that you can come up with of green flags and then red flags when choosing them, because now you've said a lot of things. So you've mentioned proprietary blends and testing, and maybe you can break it down for us.
Okay. So green flag is quality company that's been around more than 10 years. Green flag is it's in a quality retail company. You don't have to necessarily buy it from there, but it has to be at a quality retail company like a Vitamin Shop or GNC would carry it. Amazon's not good enough. It has to have full disclosure on the ingredient declaration, on the supplement facts. So the ingredient, and if it's an herb, the genus and species, the plant part, the standardization, and the dose so that you can look it up and you know every single ingredient in that product. Another green flag would be that it doesn't have any ridiculous claims, 880% more testosterone. That would be a red flag. So moving into red flags is proprietary blends, ridiculous claims, comes from a company I haven't heard of. You can only find it on Amazon. These are the big red flags. And if the price seems too good to be true, it is. I promise it is. There are no real deals to be had in supplements. When you get a product that all the other companies that you've heard of are selling for $30, and you find some other company on Amazon that has even 5-star reviews and thousands of them, which you can manipulate, and they're selling it for $10, it's too good to be true. I promise it is.
Amazing. You have mentioned proprietary blends a few times now. I would like to ask you, when you formulate, because you have seen a lot of supplements, of course, is there a number that is too much? Is there such thing as too many ingredients? And if yes, what is your ballpark?
I feel like if you're looking at a multivitamin, no, like you're going to have a lot of ingredients. But by the way, when I've worked on multivitamins, I've spent about 4 years bringing that to market because there's so many ingredients and there's so many nutrient to nutrient interactions. You have to work on the stability of each ingredient and then how each ingredient interacts with each other over time. And that's called accelerated and real-time stability work. And then you actually do like scale up blends to see like how it's blending and whether there's issues on that side. And with a multivitamin that has 40, 50, 60 ingredients, whatever it is. There's a lot of ingredients. There's a lot of work there to be done. Literally, the testing on each raw material input and the stability on each input, as well as the whole formula. So, yes, you can have more than 5 or 6 ingredients, and it gets infinitely more complex when it is still full disclosure. You're doing all the testing. There's a lot of work to be done. So typically, I would say look for, maybe 4 to 6 ingredients is my sweet spot when I'm formulating. But there's no like hard, fast rule. It's just my sensors go off, the red flags go up if there's 20 ingredients in there, and it's not a multivitamin.
You mentioned stability. I'm assuming that means the length of how this is effective.
That's part of it. So there's things like what you do with real time and accelerated stability is there's typically a 2-year shelf life on a product. And with supplements, they have to test out per the label claim on the label at the end of the life of the product, as well as when you manufacture it. So usually you're putting in overages to account for loss over time, or these nutrient to nutrient interactions. Plus there's moisture, there's light, there's heat, there's things that can affect this. So what we do when we're manufacturing these ingredients and working on this is that we're doing this real-time stability, which means you're just looking at it every month over the 2 years and seeing where it tests out. You're doing like testing over that time. And then we're also doing accelerated stability work where we're putting it under heat and moisture and seeing how it tests out over time too. So we're doing this work to try and understand, like, how does this formula evolve and change? And then should we make additions or subtractions as a result? Is this one ingredient impairing the others, or do we need to add more excipients? Do we need to maybe not have a clear bottle that's letting in all this light? Whatever it is, do we need to have a desiccant pack that protects it against moisture and the formula from getting hygroscopic? Now, if it's a formula that is a ready to mix or ready to drink, a product that you would consume, then there's flavor components to it too. And that's when we're not only going to look at real-time and accelerated stability work, but we're going to do tasting and blending. We're going to see, it's called organoleptics, where we're seeing, is it still blending as well? Does it still taste like it should? Or has the flavor faded? Or is there volatile compounds that are in there that make it smell or taste weird over time? Like, these are important things too.
I was actually, while I was preparing for this episode, going through all the supplements in my kitchen. And I realized at some point, I don't even know how old some of these powders are. So I was thinking about maybe we should normalize something like a supplement hygiene routine. But then I was wondering, for example, I saw a protein powder and it was clumpy and I wasn't sure if that's a sign, if it's good or if it's bad. But then I wondered what actually happens when a supplement is over its average shelf life, or if you say this 2 years that you mentioned. Is it actually toxic? Should I be throwing it away, or do you think it's just less effective?
It typically is not that it's toxic. It's just not going to necessarily meet label claim. Another simple thing that could happen is over time, when you talk about that protein powder, why it's getting clumpy is it's known as hygroscopic. It's pulling in moisture. What this is doing, though, is if you're taking a scoop, that scoop is by volume, not mass. In the US, we do our recipes based on volume, cup, teaspoon, tablespoon, and not mass like the rest of the world does. And they use the metric system, which makes far more sense. So in Europe, they would have used 33 grams of something. That actually makes more sense. But anyway, the volume based, if you're adding moisture over time and it's getting clumpy, that means that water is coming in to this protein powder. That means that in your scoop, you're actually getting a little less protein. You're getting a little less sweetener, a little less flavor when you're mixing it in, right? So that's a factor. It's not really that it's toxic. It's just that you're getting less in that scoop over time.
That's very interesting and good to know. I have a question. I found out when I was going through, some of these sites and some Reddit pages about what confuses people, that a lot of it was the back of the product. We all here don't trust what's on the front, turn it around and read it. But that's where it gets very confusing for a lot of people because these numbers can be very confusing. Sometimes there is something like a daily recommended dose or daily average thousands and thousands. Sometimes it's 40. Sometimes it says it can't be calculated. There's just some dots. How would you tell anyone who's looking at the back and who's really trying to understand that they are taking a good product? How would you tell them to navigate this backside?
Carlene, you have actually really great questions. I love these. I've been doing this for a long time, and these are really good questions. A lot of people are asking for kind of bigger concepts, and I like that you're asking these questions that are very practical.
That's the goal. I really want to make sure our listeners can take something away that they can make better choices when it comes to their supplements.
I love that. So you're talking about what's known as daily value. And it used to be called RDA, recommended daily allowance. Then it was RDI. And then we evolved into like DV, these daily values. And it's basically there's certain nutrients that we require a daily intake to hit. And it's kind of evolved from what would prevent disease to somewhat optimal, but I definitely don't believe they're optimized for like what is optimal health. There are supraphysiologic doses of some of these ingredients that can have different effects. There's another term called orthomolecular, which means very large doses. So think of vitamin C. Up until the early 80s, people thought 60 milligrams was the amount of vitamin C that we needed, and it prevented scurvy. That's not a huge problem for most of us. We're getting enough vitamin C to prevent scurvy. So that was the understanding. Get 100% of your RDA to prevent disease. And that was like where we were in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. That was a thing. Like people were worried about nutrient deficiencies and disease. But as we became a society that had plenty of food and the potential for quality nutrition in the food, then we started to look at like what are actually some of these bigger doses doing. And Linus Pauling was one of the first to look at these bigger doses with vitamin C. And that led to a boom, not only in vitamin C, but supplements in general in the late 70s, early 80s. That was really the kind of birth of the industry was vitamin C, and people were taking it to prevent colds and have like a stronger immune system. They were taking grams of vitamin C, meaning 1,000, 2,000 milligrams, 3,000 milligrams a day of vitamin C, much higher than 60 milligrams, and therefore a very different use case when what is the optimal dose versus the disease prevention dose. And so these are two very different conversations, but those DVs are listing nutrients that we have a need or necessity for because we cannot make them endogenously in the body. We need them exogenously outside of the body in food or supplement. And we also know that our soil is depleted. We have ultra processed food. We are being exposed to EMF and glyphosate and volatile compounds and all the things that we're getting exposed to, phytoestrogens and xenoestrogens with microplastics and nanoplastics and all the EMF, like all the things that we are getting exposed to probably necessitates even more of these compounds than we're actually thinking we need, that were based on research from years and years and years ago. And it's like moving an iceberg right now to get these things to change. For example, vitamin D changed not too long ago. To go from 400 IUs to 1,000 IUs was a big deal. And some other countries already have 2,000 IUs. And some people are taking 5,000 to 10,000 IUs a day. And we're just not there yet. It moves slowly. And they have these huge boards that have to review about 10 years worth of data. And I do understand that because these recommendations are broad sweeping across an entire population, hundreds of millions of people it affects. So it is a big deal. And at the same time, I wish these things moved a little bit faster. In summary, a lot of these daily values, these DVs, all the other ingredients, these other herbs, things like creatine that have a lot of value themselves, we don't necessarily have a disease implication if we don't take them. Not to say that they don't have value, not to say that they can't reduce the chances of many diseases. it has to be a direct correlation. You don't take this, you get disease. You have a nutrient deficiency. So that's what the DBs are that are listed. And then these other compounds, these other herbs don't have DBs and just have the star star.
That's super, super interesting. And it must be fascinating and also frustrating to be you in this industry, be at the forefront, and then kind of rely on guidelines and research that may be super old. So thank you for that input. One other thing that I found out that people do care about is finding and choosing clean products. I wanted to ask you, how can a consumer understand and choose a product that is clean?
Man, you have literally the best questions. I am really impressed.
Thank you so much.
So this is a really important question as we move forward too, is the first part of this discussion was, does it have what we want in the product? Talking about the testing and full disclosure and no proprietary blends. Does it have the actual effective doses of these ingredients? And this is important, just because a label says something doesn't mean it's in there, that you're buying from these companies that are investing in quality control. And we talked about the best companies. But the flip side of this is, does it not have the things we don't want in there, which are heavy metals and biologicals and maybe excipients that have potential issues like titanium dioxide or mag stearate potentially. And some of these things are a little controversial. They may not be incredibly harmful, but they do have some concern for harm. And for those of us that are taking many supplements, where we're taking 10 capsules, 20 capsules, 50 capsules, 100 capsules a day, well, then you can start thinking about how your risk exposure is going up. Maybe at 2 capsules a day, this isn't very significant because we're looking at this in a vacuum. But when we're taking 20 different supplements, it becomes significant. So this is the concern. And if you talk about a clean formula, again, these very high-end healthcare practitioner lines are probably my favorite because they have the branded ingredients that are patented, that have the studies that are insured for quality control, and they're continuing to do more research. There's a quality assurance there that you know that Sensoril for ashwagandha or Infinity Paraxanthine or, these branded high-level ingredients really are going to do something and have the research and have the patents and have the investment there. And then on top of that, looking at these formulas, you want to make sure that, again, with these healthcare practitioner lines, that it is full disclosure. They almost always have the synergistic formulas that are really, they look at the mechanism of action of each ingredient. And they can spend a little bit more because people think about it almost like a medication, and they're getting it from their naturopath or their chiropractor or their functional or integrative doctor. And so these formulas are very high end. And then lastly, not only is the quality control there, but they're leaving out some of these excipients that may be potentially harmful as well. Pure Encapsulations does a lot of work there. And so these formulas I really have a lot of faith in companies like Thorne and in particular Pure Encapsulations.
Amazing. And I was wondering, are there any words, for example, when it comes to food, we know if it says sugar or if it says certain chemical, we should keep our fingers off. But what about supplements? Is there any word that we know, okay, if this is a certain filler, if this is a certain chemical that might be widely used, we should basically not buy the product?
I would say that mag stearate, magnesium stearate, there is small amount of concern. Titanium dioxide has gone from small amount to maybe a medium amount of concern. And I think from there, maybe, you may have concern over like a soy lecithin that's often used in a lot of products to help with emulsification, meaning how well it blends in particular if there's fat of some source in there. It helps the fat become part of the solution. And so you might have like a soy lecithin that is actually GMO. So you may get some phytoestrogens, you may have some GMO concerns, you may have glyphosate concerns. Those are some things that I would look at. I would certainly avoid soy protein, period. I would not touch that. And then one that is a little frustrating right now, but is real, is a lot of the vegan proteins are high in heavy metals. In particular, rice protein is very high in lead, and cocoa powder is high in lead and titanium and some of these things. So if you're adding cocoa to rice as a vegan chocolate protein, you're getting probably 10 times your allowable amount of these heavy metals in just one shake.
Incredible. Thank you for that insight. I would love to move on to the next topic, which is for anyone who's on the other side of the spectrum. Maybe somebody who's thinking about it or starting a company who wants to create a supplement and wants to do it in the right way, who really wants to make something that is effective and that is good. What would you say as a tip? Where do you even start? How do you create the perfect formula?
As a formulator, I would be thinking about one, you have to look at what's called COGS, your cost of goods sold. Anytime you're formulating, you get a cost that you can hit as a mark. And typically there's not a lot of range there. There may be some kind of cost to, profitability of what we will sell it in at with depends on where you're selling it. If you're selling in retail channels or you're selling it direct to consumer, there's more margin. But when you sell direct to consumer, you often have to spend a lot of your own money on funnels, on search engine, on all these different mechanisms to pull in customers, right? Versus retail, where you're just taking a loss on margin when you just essentially sell it in to the retailer. And then some of the retailers don't even give you your money until it's actually sold, which means you're just tying up investment for what could be a year or 2 years with your inventory and taking all the risk yourself. So all that said, you're looking at the costs. That's number one. And you're formulating to that cost. So when I'm thinking about this, I have $15 of this formula that I can formulate to. What is the cost of these raw materials? Then I'm going to find all over the world where I can source these from. Some of them may be these branded ingredients. Some of them may be generic ingredients, but I'm testing out the raw materials to make sure that they test out third party and not just taking a COA and its specs and just assuming that it's going to test out, because I have these printed documents that say it tests out. Because that raw material supplier, it's in their own best interest to say it tests out. I need to take it to a third party lab to actually verify that what they said is true. And honestly, a lot of the time it does not test out and meet what they said. So that's where I have to do additional work and qualify the supplier and qualify the raw material. And then from there, it depends. Like if I'm looking to flavor a product, I'm thinking about, do these ingredients have flavor issues? That's again called organoleptic issues. Are there stability issues with these ingredients? Do they pull in moisture? Do they lose nutrient values quickly over time? Are there any nutrient to nutrient interactions that I would know of? Are there any biochemical reactions in the body if I add these two ingredients? That can be a concern. And then I'm thinking about my dose. Like maybe it's a pre-workout and they say, well, we want something that's 20 grams and fits in a stick pack. We can't do a 40-gram pre-workout. That would be too big and won't fit in a stick pack. Okay, well, then I'm thinking about that. Or they might say, I'm formulating a ready-to-drink protein and I want to hit 15 grams of protein. I want to be under 100 calories and it has to be natural. Okay, like now I'm thinking, all right, it needs to be stevia. It needs to be this whey protein that's instantized. And here's the dose because it's 80% protein by mass. Okay, so I need about 20 grams of whey protein to hit the 15 grams of protein claim. These are the things that I'm working through.
And there's another word which one always speaks of when it comes to making sure a formula is effective, which is bioavailability. I would like to ask you if you could maybe explain it in a consumer-friendly way so that me and everyone listening who is not as professional as you can understand what exactly this actually means and how you can kind of make sure that your products or your ingredients are bioavailable.
So bioavailability is how usable the ingredient will be to your biology, to your body, to your physiology. Meaning that when you take an ingredient the active compound, let's say in the herb that it's standardized to, or if it's pure compound, that compound, will it reach your tissue at 100%? Most likely not. The liver may have some effect on filtering this out. It may metabolize into a different ingredient. It may not survive the stomach acid pH. There's a lot of issues that can happen. So we may do something that bypasses the liver's filtering, which could be like black pepper or grapefruit compounds that actually turn off the cytochrome P450 pathway. Or we may do something where we enterically coat the ingredient, we microencapsulate the ingredient so it survives the gut and the stomach acid. We may do something that inhibits certain enzymes like MAO and COMT that are a factor. And maybe there's even genetic differences, like with MTHFR and how you metabolize folic acid, for example. So we want it more in the active form where it doesn't have to have several enzymatic steps to get to the active form. Bioavailability just means how available is it to your biology to use? How much of it are you actually going to take in and use? So if it's 100 milligrams, what percentage of that are you actually getting as your net effect?
Amazing. You have obviously seen a lot of people wanting to create products coming to you. Is there one thing that you see over and over that you could just wish to tell people, in advance so they don't have to make the same mistake that maybe hundreds or thousands others did before them?
There's a few things. This is a big issue, is that people just assume a great product will sell itself. It doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. I know tons of bad products that are selling like crazy. And I know tons of great products that are sitting there on a shelf or sitting there in a warehouse. You need some method of distribution and way to draw in eyeballs that is so important. This is where marketers are king. It's not formulators. I would love to say that what I do is the most important, but I would say that the marketing is the most important, and having someone see it, get excited about it, buy it. It's priced at the right price point for that consumer. The messaging resonates with that avatar or essentially their psychographics and demographics. So there's a lot of work to be done on that front. And if you don't have 1 million people on your email list, and you don't have a tested out funnel that works, and you don't have all your social media platforms built out, like with TikTok or Instagram, this can be difficult because a lot of times it's 10,000 units minimum order quantity that we're looking at. And that's not a big deal if you have like a huge list and you have a way to market it and you have a message that resonates, not a big deal. But if you buy your products and then try and figure it out, it becomes a very big deal where you could be sitting on that inventory and a year later be panicked because you don't know how to get rid of it. So this is what I would say is really important. As far as formula, it's a fine line of hitting the right price point and having the best efficacy. What I've found is if I was someone just coming into this industry, experiential matters the most. This is how I formulate most of my products. And most of the ingredients that I've patented, and I've created about 40 ingredients, experiential rises to the top. Why? Because you can feel it. You feel the difference. You're far more likely to stay on a product that you can feel. You're far more likely to not need as much education on a product you can feel. You're far more likely to rebuy a product you can feel. So that's where I think it's really important to have something that's experiential. And that's why like ingredients, like one of my newest ingredients is paraxanthine, which is a metabolite of caffeine. It has a very clean, energy enhancing, like nootropic effect, much cleaner than a caffeine. People try it, love it, want to stay on it for life. And so that is like better than a St. John's wort or CoQ10 or, something, not to say those ingredients don't have value, but they're just not as experiential. And so that's a factor for me. And then again, like just thinking about complementary mechanisms of action. Is every ingredient necessary? Is every ingredient doing something? Is every ingredient at its study-backed, claim-based dose? and form. And I think these are some of the key things. And of course, when it comes to flavoring, I do a lot of work on flavoring, and flavoring is king, just like marketing is king. And it almost is more important than the formula itself, because people will justify something that tastes great. And if it doesn't taste good, they're not going to stay on it pretty much no matter how effective it is or how clean it is.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and, all your inputs. I really, really appreciate it. I would love to now talk about my third topic, which is basically to get Shawn Wells' view on the industry. Where do you think this market is going, or what are you excited about? Of course, maybe something that you're working on. Feel free to just share whatever is on your mind.
Yeah. So I think the market is going right now. Peptides are going absolutely bonkers, and GLP-1s are sometimes thrown in with that word peptides. So one of the things I'm working on is legal peptides that are dietary supplement compliant, like my ingredient dileucine, which is two leucines, two amino acids put together, that is really effective for muscle protein synthesis. But I do see peptide companies being compounded with supplements, and supplement companies bringing in peptides. It's not all legal with peptides, but it's also kind of a gray area. And there's a lot of companies that are playing in between. And so regardless, we know peptides are hot. People are buying them like crazy. They're very effective, and it's having an effect on the zeitgeist of the consumer market, because people are buying tirzepatide and Ozempic and retatrutide and these GLP-1s, and then they're buying BPC 157 and TB 500 and seeing healing effects on their injuries, and they're getting these exercise mimetic compounds and anti-aging mitochondrial enhancing compounds like MOTS-c. And one of the things that I just see happening is peptide not going away. And we're seeing the word being used heavily in supplements, and we're seeing the peptide knowledge just grow pretty rapidly. And so that's having a big effect on supplements. And I think there is a lot of crossover between the two, and the supplement industry can't ignore it for long. There's things happening in the market, and people are demanding either supplements that work like the peptides or combinations of supplements and peptides. But it's been a very interesting time, especially over the last 6 months. I would say peptides have just gone crazy. Certainly with that discussion, GLP-1s, so supplements that help if you're on a GLP-1 medication. So looking at bone mass, looking at, because you've slowed down GI transit, maybe something that helps with constipation, looking at muscle mass loss. So things like protein and my dileucine that I just mentioned, HMB, creatine, these are becoming very important as well for people using these GLP-1 medications. Also, some people don't want to use the GLP-1 medication. So there's a lot of supplements that are making claims around GLP-1 to use as an alternative to the medication. So again, there's just a lot of discussion around peptides and GLP-1s. I think beyond that, we're seeing personalization become a huge factor of, based on your labs, based on your epigenetics, based on your gut microbiome, that you are going to receive this formula that is variable from month to month or week to week. And that is very compelling. It's very complex. It's very difficult to achieve at a contract manufacturer level, at a labeling level, at a per person level. It becomes very complex. Maybe like wearables, are going to become like a factor in that too. And all this data that's coming up and your supplement being tailored to your data. So there's a lot there. And then lastly, I would say that things that affect the gut microbiome and things that are nootropic, and then the combination of the two with that gut-brain axis, have become very compelling. We know like a lot of the neurotransmitters are in the gut, and we know a lot of gut health affects your immune health, affects your mood, affects your hormone levels, affects your nutrient availability, your inflammation, your disease risk. So there's a lot happening right now with postbiotics and symbiotics, and then what's called psychobiotics, which are probiotics or postbiotics that affect your cognitive factors. So there's a lot happening right now on these fronts. And certainly, I think just in general, as you're hearing, there's kind of a blurring of what was medicine and big pharma with supplement. And I think that's becoming very blurry in a way that I think is very good. Supplements are being taken a lot more serious. There's big studies that are being performed with these supplement companies and branded ingredients. They're highly effective at this point. There's no getting rid of the supplement industry. So people are highly reliant on supplements at this point, and people are taking them to improve performance, to reduce risk for aging, and all of these different factors that I'm bringing up. So it's an exciting time.
It absolutely is. I'm very sure the supplement market is not going to get smaller, but that's why it's even more important to help guide people how to make the right choices. So I want to say thank you so much for all the inputs and sharing all your expertise. And I know that you really share so much detailed, helpful, insightful tips, whether it's in your book, in the little formulators corner, or on your website, you have recommendations, or on Instagram. Thank you so much for that. I really look up to that. It's very inspirational. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you. And so, my book is The Energy Formula, as you brought up. You can go to energyformula.com or shawnwells.com, SHAWN. I have at Shawn Wells, as you mentioned, on Instagram with all of this content, with infographics on stacks. I have a newsletter that goes out every week on shawnwells.com, SHAWNWELLS. It's all free. I go over studies and stacks and all the things that you could possibly use. And with the book, there's the Audible, the ebook, the hardcover, the soft cover, and now I have a course based on the energy formula. And then also, if you're a Mind Valley person, I have the ultimate guide to supplements on the Mind Valley platform as well.